Imagine a man who spent 40 years working tirelessly for his family. He sacrificed his dreams, worked overtime, skipped vacations, and told himself one comforting sentence over and over again: "One day, when I grow old, my family will take care of me." But when he finally turned 70, something unexpected happened. His children were busy with their own lives. Grandchildren barely visited. Phone calls became shorter, and slowly, the house that once felt full of life became quiet. Not because his family didn't love him, but because life moved on. This is one of the hardest truths about aging. When you are between 60 and 85, the world around you changes. Children build their own families. Friends begin to disappear. Energy is not what it used to be. And suddenly, you realize something very important. The strongest support system in old age is not always family. It is the pillars you build around your life. These pillars protect your independence, dignity, and happiness when everything else begins to shift. And the people who understand these pillars often live their later years calmer, happier, and far more fulfilled than those who depend only on others. In this video, we are going to reveal the 7 most powerful pillars of life between the ages of 60 and 85, the supports that truly hold people up when life becomes uncertain. And if you are approaching this stage of life, or you have parents who are, this video may change how you see aging forever. But before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because here we explore the deep psychological truths about life, aging, and human nature that most people only understand when it is too late. Now let's talk about the real pillars that support a person after 60. 1. Financial independence. The first pillar is something many people feel uncomfortable talking about, yet it quietly shapes the entire experience of aging. Money. Not because money buys happiness. Everyone knows that happiness cannot simply be purchased, but there is something else money provides in old age that is incredibly powerful. It protects dignity. Think about this for a moment. For most of their lives, people between 60 and 85 were the ones providing for others. They paid the bills, built the house, paid school fees, and sacrificed their own comfort so their children could live better lives. They were the ones others depended on. But as the years pass, life begins to change in subtle ways. Children grow up. They build their own families. They have their own responsibilities, their own financial pressures, their own struggles. And slowly, something delicate begins to happen. If an older adult depends completely on their children financially, they often start feeling a quiet hesitation inside. Before buying something small, they think twice. Before asking for money, they pause. Before making a decision, they wonder if they should ask permission first. No one may say it out loud, but internally, a feeling begins to grow. A feeling that many older people describe with a painful word: burden. Not because their children don't love them, but because depending on someone financially changes the emotional balance of relationships. Suddenly, simple choices are no longer simple. A small trip, a medical expense, even buying something they enjoy. Each decision begins to carry a silent question. Am I asking for too much? And over time, this slowly chips away at a person's sense of independence. But something completely different happens when an older adult has their own financial stability. Even if it is not a large amount, it does not need to be wealth. It just needs to be enough to stand on their own feet. Because financial independence gives something priceless. Freedom. Freedom to make choices. Freedom to help others rather than always needing help. Freedom to enjoy life without constantly calculating whether someone else will approve. Imagine a 72-year-old man who wakes up in the morning and decides he wants to visit an old friend in another city. If he has financial independence, he simply books the ticket and goes. No guilt, no hesitation, no waiting for someone else's permission. That small moment carries something powerful: self-respect. There is a beautiful story about a retired school teacher who once explained this perfectly. After retirement, he had modest savings and a small pension. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough for him to take care of his needs. One day his son asked him, "Why are you so careful about maintaining your savings? You can always ask us if you need something." The old teacher smiled and said something profound. "The greatest gift I can give my children is not my money, it is my independence." What he meant was simple but powerful. When older parents can support themselves, the relationship with their children remains loving rather than obligated. Visits become genuine. Conversations feel lighter. There is no hidden tension about financial dependence. Instead of feeling like a responsibility, parents remain a source of wisdom, strength, and dignity. And the truth is, many older people who plan their finances wisely often experience a much calmer and happier later life. They can pursue hobbies. They can travel a little. They can give gifts to grandchildren. They can help others in need. And those small acts create something deeply meaningful. Because independence in old age is not just about money. It is about maintaining control over your own life story. It is about waking up every day knowing that you still have the ability to make choices. And that feeling becomes one of the strongest emotional foundations a person can have between the ages of 60 and 85. Because at the end of the day, financial independence does something very powerful. It allows a person to grow older, not with fear, but with dignity, confidence, and peace. 2. Good health. The second pillar may sound obvious at first, but it is often the one people realize the importance of only when it begins to slip away. Health. For most of their lives, people are busy chasing responsibilities. They work long hours. They raise children. They build careers. They take care of everyone around them. And during those years, many people tell themselves the same comforting sentence: "One day, when I retire, I will finally start enjoying life." They imagine peaceful mornings, long walks in the park, traveling to places they never had time to visit, spending relaxed afternoons with friends and family. But here is the harsh truth many people discover too late. If the body begins to fail, those dreams quietly disappear. Imagine a man who worked tirelessly for 40 years. He always postponed vacations, postponed rest, postponed taking care of his health. He believed retirement would be the time when life finally slows down. But at 68, serious health problems begin to appear. Now, instead of traveling, he spends time in hospital waiting rooms. Instead of long walks, even climbing stairs feels exhausting. Instead of enjoying freedom, every day revolves around medications and doctor appointments. The freedom he imagined never truly arrived. And this is why good health becomes one of the most powerful pillars between the ages of 60 and 85. Because healthy older adults possess something incredibly valuable that many people take for granted: energy. They wake up in the morning and their bodies still allow them to move, explore, and participate in life. They can take a morning walk in the fresh air. They can travel to visit relatives or explore new places. They can sit with friends for long conversations filled with laughter and memories. They can play with their grandchildren, not just watch from a chair. These may sound like small things, but in old age, these small abilities become the true definition of freedom. The beautiful truth is that maintaining health does not always require extreme effort. Often, it is the simple daily habits that quietly protect the body over decades. A 30-minute walk every day, gentle stretching or light exercise to keep joints flexible, choosing balanced meals instead of constantly eating processed food, drinking enough water, going for regular medical checkups instead of ignoring warning signs. These habits may feel ordinary in the moment, but over time, they create something extraordinary. They build a body that can still carry you through life even in your later years. There is a 4-year-old man who lives in a small town and follows a simple routine every day. Every morning he walks through the neighborhood park, slowly, calmly, watching the sunrise. People who see him often ask, "Why are you so disciplined with your routine?" And his answer is simple: "Because I want my body to remain my companion, not become my prison." That sentence carries a deep truth. When the body is strong enough to move freely, life feels open. But when health collapses, even simple pleasures become difficult. Travel becomes complicated. Social life shrinks. Independence begins to fade. This is why health is not just about avoiding illness. It is about protecting the quality of life itself. Because a strong body gives older adults something incredibly important: Control. Control over their daily routine. Control over where they go. Control over how they spend their time. Without health, every other pillar in life begins to weaken. Financial independence becomes less meaningful if you cannot physically enjoy life. Friendships become harder to maintain if you lack the energy to meet people. Purpose becomes difficult when the body constantly feels exhausted. Health quietly supports everything else. It is the foundation beneath all the other pillars. And the truth is simple but powerful. The people who age with the most freedom are not always the richest. They are often the ones who protected their bodies long before old age arrived. Because when you reach the later chapters of life, your health becomes the vehicle that allows you to keep living fully. And those who protect it carefully often discover something beautiful. Growing older does not have to mean shrinking life. Sometimes, with the right habits and care, it can still mean living with strength, independence, and quiet joy. 3. Purpose. One of the most dangerous and silent things that happens to many people after retirement is not financial problems, and not even health issues. It is something much deeper: the loss of purpose. For most of their lives, people wake up every morning with a role to play in the world. For 40 or 50 years, their days are structured around responsibility. They are a teacher shaping young minds, an engineer solving problems, a business owner building something valuable, a worker providing for a family. Even the daily routine becomes part of their identity. Waking up early, getting ready for work, meeting colleagues, making decisions, solving problems, helping others. All of these small actions quietly answer one powerful question that every human being needs answered: why am I needed? But then one day, retirement arrives. At first, it feels exciting. No alarms, no deadlines, no stress. For a few weeks, it feels like freedom. But slowly, something begins to change. The phone rings less often. Colleagues stop calling. The workplace that once depended on you continues running perfectly fine without you. And one morning you wake up and realize something strange. No one is waiting for you anymore. The world you once belonged to has quietly moved on. This is the moment when many older adults begin to feel something painful that is rarely spoken about. They begin to feel invisible. Days start to blur together. Morning becomes afternoon. Afternoon becomes evening. And time, which once felt too short, suddenly feels endlessly long. Without purpose, even comfortable lives can start feeling empty. But the people who age gracefully and happily almost always share one powerful secret. They create a new purpose. They understand that purpose is not something limited to careers. Purpose is something that can be rebuilt at any stage of life. Some older adults begin mentoring younger people, sharing the wisdom they spent decades learning. A retired mechanic might teach neighborhood teenagers how to fix engines. A former teacher might help children with their studies. And in those small moments, something powerful happens. They realize their experience still has value. Some people dedicate time to volunteering, helping in community centers, supporting charities, visiting hospitals, or assisting those who are struggling. And in doing so, they rediscover something incredibly meaningful: the joy of being useful. Others pursue hobbies they never had time for earlier in life: painting, writing, gardening, music, woodworking. Things that once felt like small interests slowly grow into passions that fill their days with creativity and excitement. There is a beautiful story about a man who retired at the age of 65 after working as an accountant his entire life. For the first year, he felt lost. He spent most of his time watching television and waiting for the day to end. Then one day, he remembered something he loved as a child: growing plants. He started a small garden in his backyard. At first, it was just a few plants, but slowly, his garden grew larger. Neighbors began asking him for advice. Children came to learn how to plant vegetables. Soon his small garden became a place where people gathered. Years later, when someone asked him what changed his life after retirement, he said something powerful. "I thought retirement meant the end of my usefulness, but I discovered something beautiful: purpose doesn't retire." That sentence carries a deep truth. Human beings are not designed to simply exist. We are designed to contribute, create, and influence the world around us. When people lose that sense of contribution, life begins to feel smaller. But when purpose returns, something incredible happens. Energy returns. Curiosity returns. Even the mind feels sharper and more alive. Suddenly, waking up in the morning feels meaningful again, because someone might need your advice. Someone might learn from your experience. Or you might simply be creating something beautiful that didn't exist before. Purpose gives life direction. Without it, time feels empty. But with purpose, even the later chapters of life can feel surprisingly rich, meaningful, and exciting. Because growing older does not mean becoming irrelevant. In many ways, it is the stage of life where your wisdom, experience, and perspective become most valuable. And the people who understand this secret often discover something remarkable. The later chapters of life can sometimes become the most meaningful chapters of all. 4. Strong friendships. As people move through life, something subtle and almost invisible begins to happen. Friendships slowly fade. Not because people stop caring about each other, but because life quietly pulls everyone in different directions. Careers become demanding. Families require attention. Responsibilities grow heavier. And before anyone realizes it, the friends who once spent hours talking, laughing, and sharing life together are suddenly seen only once in a while, or sometimes not at all. For many older adults, between the ages of 60 and 85, this gradual loss of friendships becomes one of the most painful but least talked about changes in life. Children grow up and move away. Neighbors change. Colleagues from work disappear after retirement. And the social circle that once felt large slowly becomes smaller and quieter. But here is something many people only realize later in life. Friendships are one of the most underrated supports in old age. Family relationships are important, of course. But friendships provide something very unique, something even loving families sometimes cannot offer. Friends share the same memories. They remember the stories that no one else understands. The silly mistakes from youth, the struggles of earlier years, the victories that shaped who you became. When old friends sit together, conversations often flow effortlessly because they are built on decades of shared life. There is no need to explain everything from the beginning. They already know. And sometimes the most healing thing in the world is simply sitting with someone who remembers the same chapters of life that you lived. Friends also offer something incredibly valuable: conversations without obligation. Family relationships sometimes carry expectations and responsibilities. Parents worry about their children. Children worry about their parents. Everyone is trying to fulfill a role. But friendships often feel lighter. You can speak freely. You can laugh without worrying about being judged. You can complain about small frustrations without feeling like a burden. And that freedom creates emotional relief that many older adults deeply need. There is a simple but powerful truth about aging. Loneliness is one of the greatest threats to mental and emotional health. Many older people spend long hours alone. Days pass quietly. Sometimes entire afternoons go by without a single meaningful conversation. And over time, that silence can begin to feel heavy. But a single phone call from a close friend can change everything. 1 hour of conversation, remembering old stories, laughing about the past. Suddenly, the loneliness fades. Energy returns. The heart feels lighter. It is amazing how powerful human connection can be. There is a beautiful story about two men in their 70s who made a simple promise to each other decades ago. They agreed that no matter how busy life became, they would meet once every week for tea. Through the years, life tested that promise many times. Careers changed. Families grew. Health challenges appeared. But they continued meeting every week. By the time they reached their 70s, those weekly meetings had become something far more important than they ever expected. It had become their anchor, a moment of connection in a world that was constantly changing. One of them once said something very touching. "Some days, that 1 hour with my friend is the thing that reminds me life is still beautiful." That sentence reveals something powerful. Friendships are not just pleasant additions to life. In old age, they often become lifelines. They provide emotional support during difficult times. They remind us that we are not alone in our experiences. They bring laughter into days that might otherwise feel quiet and heavy. And perhaps most importantly, they help people feel seen and understood. Because sometimes what the human heart needs most is not advice or solutions. It simply needs someone who listens, someone who remembers, someone who cares. This is why people who maintain strong friendships as they age often experience less loneliness, stronger mental health, and greater happiness. Their lives remain socially alive. Their conversations remain meaningful, and their hearts remain connected to the world around them. Because as the years pass and many things in life begin to change, one truth becomes very clear. The friends who walk beside us through the different chapters of life often become one of the strongest pillars supporting us in our later years. 5. Emotional resilience. Life after the age of 60 is not just a physical journey. It is also a deep emotional journey. Many people spend decades preparing financially for retirement. They plan savings, pensions, houses, and security. But very few people prepare for something equally important: the emotional changes that come with aging. Because the truth is, the later chapters of life often bring challenges that test the heart in ways younger years rarely do. Friends who once shared decades of memories slowly begin to disappear. Some move away, some fall ill, and sometimes the painful reality arrives that someone who walked beside you for years is suddenly gone forever. Health concerns begin to appear more frequently. Doctor visits become more common. The body that once felt strong and reliable occasionally sends uncomfortable reminders that time has passed. Family dynamics also change. Children become busy with their own responsibilities. Grandchildren grow up in a different world. And sometimes older adults quietly feel that their role in the family has shifted. They are still loved, but they are no longer at the center of daily life. All of these changes can create a quiet emotional storm inside many people. Some begin to dwell on the past. They replay old regrets. They think about missed opportunities. They compare the energy of their younger years with the slower rhythm of their present life. And slowly, a painful belief can begin to grow in their mind. My best years are behind me. But the people who truly thrive between the ages of 60 and 85 often develop something incredibly powerful: emotional resilience. Emotional resilience is the ability to face life's changes without allowing them to break your spirit. It is the quiet strength that allows someone to say, "Life is changing, but I will adapt." Instead of resisting reality, resilient people accept it. They understand that every stage of life has its own beauty and its own meaning. They don't waste energy fighting what cannot be changed. Instead, they focus on what can still be experienced. For example, imagine two people who both retire at the same age. One spends his days constantly saying, "Life was better before." He compares every moment of the present with memories from the past. Slowly, his world becomes smaller because his mind is trapped in yesterday. But the other person chooses a different mindset. He says, "I may not be 30 anymore, but I still have life left to live." He begins exploring things he never had time for before. He spends more time with nature. He reconnects with old passions. He appreciates small moments that younger people often overlook. And something beautiful begins to happen. Instead of shrinking, his life becomes deeper and more meaningful. There is a powerful story about an 82-year-old woman who lost her husband after more than 50 years of marriage. For a long time, grief felt overwhelming. Her house felt too quiet. Every corner reminded her of the life they once shared. But after some time, she made a conscious decision. She told herself something very simple but incredibly powerful. "My husband would not want the rest of my life to become a waiting room." So she slowly began rebuilding her life. She joined a community group. She started painting again, something she had loved in her youth. She began traveling with a small group of friends her age. When someone once asked her how she managed to remain so positive, she answered with wisdom that only years can teach. Aging teaches you something important. You cannot control what life takes from you, but you can control how you respond to it. That is the essence of emotional resilience. It is not about pretending life is always easy. It is about choosing strength over bitterness, gratitude over regret, Resilient older adults often focus on the things that are still present in their lives. The sunrise they can still watch, the conversations they can still have, the lessons they can still share. They replace the sentence, "My best years are behind me," with a far more powerful belief, "I still have life to experience." And that simple shift in perspective changes everything, because aging then stops feeling like a slow loss. Instead, it begins to feel like a new stage of wisdom, reflection, and meaningful living. The truth is, every human life moves through seasons. Youth brings energy, middle age brings responsibility, but later life brings something equally valuable, perspective, and those who develop emotional resilience often discover something remarkable. The later chapters of life, despite their challenges, can become some of the most emotionally rich and meaningful years a person will ever experience. 6. Lifelong learning. One of the most damaging myths society quietly spreads is this: learning belongs to the young. People often assume that education is something you do in your 20s, maybe your 30s, and then life becomes about repeating what you already know. But this belief is deeply misleading, because the truth is something far more powerful. The human brain is designed to keep growing throughout life. Even at the age of 60, 70, or 80, the brain still has the ability to form new connections, absorb new ideas, and discover new ways of thinking. Yet many people unknowingly shut this door on themselves. They begin to believe that learning is no longer necessary. They stop reading. They stop exploring new topics. They stop challenging their minds. And slowly, without realizing it, life begins to feel smaller and more repetitive. Days become predictable. Conversations repeat the same stories. Curiosity fades. But something remarkable happens when older adults choose a different path. When they continue learning, something inside them stays alive. Their minds remain active. Their thoughts remain curious. And suddenly the world continues to feel interesting and full of discovery. Learning does not always mean returning to a classroom or earning degrees. Often it is much simpler and more beautiful than that. Reading books about history, philosophy, or science. Watching documentaries that reveal how the world works. Learning a new language. Understanding new technology. Exploring music, art, or writing. Even simple activities like learning about gardening, cooking, or photography can stimulate the mind in powerful ways. Each new piece of knowledge acts like exercise for the brain. Just as muscles weaken when they are not used, the mind can also become dull if it stops being challenged. But when the brain remains engaged with new ideas, it continues to grow stronger and sharper. There is a wonderful example of a man who decided to start learning a new language at the age of 72. At first, many people around him laughed gently. They said things like, "Why bother at this age?" But he kept studying every day. 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there. Within 2 years, he was able to have simple conversations in that language. When someone asked him why he put so much effort into learning something new at his age, he smiled and said something beautiful. "Because every new thing I learn reminds me that I am still alive." That sentence carries a deep truth. Learning stimulates something incredibly powerful inside the human mind: curiosity. Curiosity is the spark that keeps life interesting. It makes people ask questions. It pushes them to explore. It reminds them that the world is still full of things they have not yet discovered. And curiosity has an incredible effect on aging. People who remain curious rarely feel mentally old. They may have wrinkles on their faces, but their minds remain youthful and energetic. They want to understand how technology works. They want to know what younger generations are thinking. They want to explore new ideas about life, science, culture, and the universe. Because of this, their conversations remain lively, their perspectives remain flexible, and their minds remain awake. An active mind also protects against one of the most difficult challenges many older adults face: mental decline and boredom. When the brain stops receiving stimulation, it becomes easier for memory problems, confusion, and mental fatigue to appear. But continuous learning acts like a powerful defense. It strengthens memory. It improves concentration. It keeps the brain functioning in dynamic ways. And perhaps most importantly, it keeps life feeling engaging. rather than repetitive. People who continue learning often share a surprising realization. They say something that younger people rarely expect to hear. The older I get, the more interesting life becomes. Why? Because with every new idea they explore, they see the world with fresh eyes again. They realize that knowledge is endless. There is always another book to read, another skill to learn, another mystery of life to understand. And suddenly, aging stops feeling like a slow closing of doors. Instead, it begins to feel like a time when the mind can explore freely without pressure or deadlines. In many ways, lifelong learning turns the later chapters of life into a new adventure, an adventure of discovery, curiosity, and mental vitality. Because the truth is simple but powerful. The people who remain mentally young are not necessarily the youngest people in the room. They are the ones who never stopped asking questions, exploring ideas, and feeding their curiosity. And when curiosity remains alive, life itself continues to feel alive as well. 7. Self-reliance. The final pillar may be the most powerful of them all. Self-reliance. But this idea is often misunderstood. Self-reliance does not mean refusing help from others or trying to prove that you don't need anyone. Human beings are social by nature, and everyone needs support at different stages of life. True self-reliance means something deeper. It means maintaining personal strength, dignity, and independence for as long as possible. It means continuing to stand on your own feet physically, mentally, and emotionally, even as the years pass. Many older adults quietly lose this pillar without realizing it. Sometimes family members begin doing everything for them out of love. They insist on making all decisions, handling all responsibilities, managing every small task. At first, it may seem helpful, but slowly something subtle begins to happen. The older person starts doing less and less for themselves. They stop making decisions. They stop solving problems. They stop challenging their mind and body. And over time, they begin to feel as if their role in life has quietly shrunk. But the older adults who age with the most dignity and confidence often choose a different path. They remain self-reliant. They continue to do as much as they can for themselves. They manage their daily routines. They stay involved in their own decisions. They keep their minds active and their spirits strong. Even simple actions carry enormous meaning. Cooking their own meals, handling their own finances, going for a walk alone, running small errands, making personal choices without always depending on others. To younger people, these may seem like ordinary tasks, but for older adults, they represent something deeply important: control over their own life. There is a powerful story about a man in his late 70s who lived alone after his wife passed away. His children often worried about him and suggested that he move in with them. But he politely refused, not because he didn't love them, but because he valued something incredibly important: his independence. Every morning, he woke up early, prepared his own breakfast, walked to the local market, and spent time reading in the park. When someone once asked him why he insisted on doing everything himself, he smiled and said something very simple yet profound: "As long as I can do things for myself, I still feel like the captain of my own life." That sentence captures the heart of self-reliance. When people maintain their independence, they preserve their sense of identity and purpose. They do not feel like they are waiting for others to manage their lives. Instead, they remain active participants in the story of their own existence. Interestingly, something beautiful happens when older adults maintain this kind of strength. They often receive more respect and admiration from the people around them. Family members see their determination. Friends notice their independence. Younger generations look at them and feel inspired, because there is something incredibly powerful about a person who continues standing strong even as time moves forward. Ironically, the people who rely less on others often receive more genuine love and support, not out of obligation, but out of admiration. People want to help them because they respect their spirit, not because they feel forced to take responsibility. Self-reliance also strengthens something very important inside the mind: confidence. Each time an older adult solves a problem, completes a task, or overcomes a challenge on their own, their brain receives a powerful message: I am still capable, That belief becomes incredibly valuable in later life, because aging can sometimes make people feel like they are slowly losing control over things around them. But self-reliance pushes against that feeling. It reminds them that their abilities, wisdom, and strength still matter. Of course, there may come a time when accepting help becomes necessary, and there is no shame in that. But the goal of self-reliance is not perfection. It is about preserving independence for as long as possible. Because independence carries something deeply connected to human dignity. It allows a person to wake up each day knowing that they are still guiding their own life, still making their own decisions, still shaping their own path. And when older adults hold on to that sense of self-reliance, something powerful becomes visible to everyone around them. They are not just growing older, they are growing stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Because true independence does something extraordinary. It allows a person to age not with helplessness, but with strength, pride, and quiet dignity. As we conclude, aging is not just about growing older. It is about building the right pillars that support your life when everything else begins to change. Family can be a beautiful part of life, but the strongest foundation in old age is something deeper: your health, your independence, your purpose, your friendships, your mindset. These pillars create a life where a person can grow older with dignity, freedom, and peace. And if there is one lesson worth remembering, it is this: the people who age the happiest are not those who depend the most on others, but those who build a life strong enough to stand on its own. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need to hear it. Because sometimes the wisdom that changes our lives is the wisdom we discover before it becomes too late.